Excellent.
And I got a nice pour, so by the end, I might be frisky.
Nice.
I did not do a pour quite that big. That's
I did
that's
not
a
either.
heroic.
Actually,
that's
no,
heroic.
there's
heroic.
a giant ice ball in the middle.
Okay.
I will be honest.
Okay.
So what you're seeing is I put the giant ice ball in, and that makes the line that I pour to this top line.
Does anybody think he's equivocating? Like perhaps trying to make an excuse for something?
Yeah,
It
I
sounded
just
a
hear
lot like
just
an
setting
excuse.
the table right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Displaced volume.
Mhm.
Yeah,
that's right. Hey,
can't
don't use
fool
big
you.
words, please.
Volume.
Here we are at episode 59 of the Construction DorkCast. In this episode, we targeted data and data strategy. So we reached out to past guest Amanda Harbison of ELECTI and new guest Chris Ovens of Aedo.AI. Fair warning on this one, nerd alert. Our guests get very geeky and nerdy in the best ways possible and talk to us about how to ask the right questions, where to get started, and how ConTechs should think about building out tech stacks with long-term data strategery in mind. Enjoy!
And we're live. That's right. The construction dorks are back, and we're data and out. That's right. We're getting crazy on data today. We've got some great guests with us. I'm excited for what we got today, but I'm really excited about my drink today. I'm going to be honest. There's a story behind this one. I'm going to take a little time out, and we're going for a new sponsor here, by the way. So Flaviar, there's competition. And it's Designer Dram. That's right. Designer Dram. This was introduced to me, and I will not call the person out until I feel like enough time has passed, because they feel really bad because this was a gift.
Statute of limitations needs to elapse.
Yes, the statute of limitations has elapsed. So this you will see right here is specifically called Thought Follower Whiskey. It's Thought Follower 2022. Created by a group of your own construction dorks through Designer Dram, where you get to pick your own bourbon layout. And so there's pure bourbon, 55%, rye bourbon, 5%, wheated, 10%, barley rye, 10%, pure rye, 20%. So that is your Thought Follower bourbon, custom made by a bunch of dorks. So here's to all of y'all. And you were calling me out on the pour. I couldn't have poured that much. This is the taster. Travis, now that you're jealous,
I am so jealous. Well, I'm stuck with this Isaac Bowman Pioneer Spirit port finished bourbon. Comes out of South Carolina. Just one of those things. My local liquor store keeps expanding their selection, so I spend way too much time just staring at the shelves. This time I just kind of walked in and I'm like, well, that's in the price range I usually like. I grabbed it and walked away. And so far it's been pretty darn good. I would recommend it. What about you, Jonathan?
I am on my daily drinker for Scotch, which is Talisker 10. If you can see if we can possibly see it, Talisker 10. And it used to be Lefroy, but like Talisker like has a weird flavor. Somebody said it, and maybe they suggested it, and now I can't get over it. Every time I taste it, it's slightly different. It's like each time I taste it, it's just a little bit different. There's a little bit different flavor combinations, and I like it progressively more each time I have it. So we'll see how long that lasts. Usually my daily drinkers are like, 3 months later, I'm like, yeah, never touching that again. So but Chris, I think you actually have a pretty decent Scotch yourself.
I do. And I rather than strive for just a podium finish in North America, I went old world, and I went with a Balvenie 12, which is nice. It's a bit of a treat. So I actually like whiskeys from around the world, and just the different flavor profiles, and just you're right, Jonathan. They show up differently, almost depending on your emotions, and it's a lot of fun.
My drink leads my emotions. I
That's
like it.
right.
How are you drinking it? Is it just neat?
Straight up neat. And I wish I should have, but I got these glasses, these vacuum sealed glasses. So they are whiskey glasses, and they funnel up to a nose. So it's but yeah, I like the whiskey's neat. I like to hold it steady right through to the end.
I feel like we could do a data on and learn about the way people drink their whiskey and how they prefer it neat, old fashions, ice, one ice. That might tell us about their personality. So segue into the data. Chris, tell us why you might be here today. What is it you say it is you do here?
What is it I do here? Well, it's and who you ask, that question may vary. I've been in analytics now for, and we'll talk a little bit about the journey, but I've been in analytics for it's crazy, but over 20 years. And I've had some really wild stops along the way, a little bit good, a lot lucky, but at the turn of the century, I was part of one of the leading groups that was the first 100% browser-based enterprise BI system, right? And so there was just a whole pile, and this is the DorkCast, so there was a whole pile of JavaScript running in, circa 2002 browsers, and from there spun up a company, and we did a bunch of things. Took us a while to figure out who we were, but we did just a whole ton of data integration, and along the way we built this bridging technology that was linking the what at that point was IBM's analytics platform to Esri in the geospatial space. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we were running around the world putting those systems together, and so Esri was one, trying to figure out just to put data. We were standing up servers everywhere. This was before AWS really was a thing. So we were, Esri was trying to figure out how this little company in Ottawa, Canada was selling all these servers. And so we ended up being acquired by them back in 2011, and spent some time in their enterprise location analytics group, to try to bring a spatial to the enterprise. And at any rate, fast forward here, found my way into construction in 2016, and made a whole pile of mistakes. I thought I'd sprinkle some technology around and it would be easy. I ran into these crazy headwinds, and at one point we said, well, if it's going to be this hard, rather than doing it for a company, let's see what we can do for an industry. And so back in 2019, we founded a company to really, push on this idea of construction data solutions, construction analytics.
Nice. Well, now you know why we brought him on, because he already got nerd in his intro. So
right.
If you can get nerd on data in your intro, and by the way, you used turn of the century.
Yeah.
You used a bunch of Java running in a browser, first ever. And then you referenced IBM's data analytics, which, like, a lot of people listening aren't even old enough to know most of those references. Sorry, man. But hey, we deal with it every day.
That's all right.
But we always balance out our guests. We always try to balance out our guests. And we've got a guest who's a repeat guest, but who we will keep repeating because she's awesome. Amanda, hello. Say hi to everybody. Introduce yourself. And that strong drink you got running there.
Yep. So my drink of choice is coffee. But if I could have an option, I'd do the Angel's Envy Rye.
Nice.
My
choice, a solid choice.
Favorite. And I do like it neat too. And I always get asked why, and I say I'm dead inside as a joke. So. But
that's the reason you work with data.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I have to find meaning in other ways.
That's right.
But Amanda Harbison, I am the director of research and analytics for ELECTI International. I've moved around quite a bit within NECA. ELECTI is the nonprofit research arm to NECA. And it's been fun. I started out originally in the biotechnology field as a research scientist. I worked on the lab with all the pipettes, all that stuff. And then I never got to play with the data that I generated all day long for. So I got upset, of course, and then went back to school to kind of get that data aspect, and then randomly found a job listing for NECA, and it has worked out ever since. So it's real fun. There's a lot of need in the industry. We're just sitting on tons of data, and it's always a fun problem to solve.
Yeah, it's been fun because you've been on now a couple of times, and so we've gotten to kind of like archive your moves. And I think we're all actually really excited to see where you've landed when it comes to ELECTI, because I think it probably opens up, at least from our perspective, it opens you up to do more. Like just
Yes.
that's the beauty of that data, right? Like it's a lake of information.
Yeah, and I think, as we know in construction industry, red tape's a big thing. And Electri is separated from that, which is great. So we have a lot more runway to do a lot of different projects.
Awesome. Travis?
Yeah. I was going to start with a little bit of background and how I got to know Chris, and I'll let him kind of expound on his process. And then, Amanda, I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts then on what Chris is doing. I met Chris, I think, originally through a former peer group company we had in Modern Niagara. They had done something. This is one. It's like a kind of a two-part wow for me. Is they had done something I have not seen much in the construction industry, in the a book I've referenced a few times, and all of a sudden I'm blanking on the title of, but exponential organizations. We had a speaker. We came up and there's I think there's probably 10 of us MEP contractors on the table, and kind of pitched the concept of, spinning up side companies with maybe even the sole intent of putting the main company out of business. And Modern Niagara was kind of going through some of these processes, and I think maybe Chris was needling it towards a technology solution at that point in time. But that's like the first bullet points. I'd like to hear you expound a little bit more on Modern Niagara's thinking there and kind of how that went. And you had talked about, even in the pre-show, you've had a long journey through the analytics, but the last 3 years you've already pivoted the company that you kind of, that I got introduced to you through. So talk a little bit about that. Full disclosure, the Helm Group has done an engagement with Chris's company, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have him on, because his process for what we were trying to do with some of the analytics and tapping into a lot of this data we have was pretty eye-opening for me.
Well, thank you. That's that's fantastic to hear. And that was it was Salim Ismail when he spoke. That was I think that had a lot of our heads spinning, and that was quite an event. And there was this concept of the immune response, right? The immune response in organizations, and part of it was getting the innovation outside the walls, right? Getting it where it had a chance to take seed and grow. At that time, we were in 2019. I put my old team back together, a lot of my old team back together, that had that had been part of that first adventure, and we got after it, and we were at the time focused on labor, but the idea was to really marry labor and materials together, right, and turn it into more of a measured science. And we did some really good work. We had we had about 50,000 man hours running through the platform weekly, and had a preliminary AI that was trolling and normalizing cost codes, and so we were doing some pretty wild stuff. And partially I was having trouble telling the story, and it just, the reaction I'd get was sort of this guarded, danger, right? Like people would kind of put their hands up and like, well, let me know how that goes, right? And so we, the path was uncertain, and we ran into COVID. And at that point, we had about 20 people inside of that first year, and we all saw it. The world stopped, and it wasn't quite clear how we were gonna survive that. And in fact, we got down to pretty much a week of cash left, and it was funny. It was a crazy time, and I was turning over every rock. But there was sort of this, there was something about it, right? It was like the default situation was we were going out of business, and maybe there was a way to pull it back from the edge. And we did it by just kind of parking our ideas and getting to work. And there was some digitization work, ERP replacement that was taking place, and we just got busy, right? And I remember that I said to the team, just pick up a shovel. I don't know how this plays out, right? and so it and all of a sudden we were stable. and it got super quiet for me, right? Like nobody needed me. I can talk tech, but I don't do much in the way of coding or SQL. So, but it got super quiet for me, and everybody was busy, and we were stable. And I just had a period of time with my thoughts, and I was like, okay, what? That I didn't love that. That wasn't great. I don't think I want to do that. I don't want to take a bunch of money and be have to answer to other people, and so and through that period, all of a sudden the phone started ringing, and I kept somebody to say, hey, can you get me a Power BI developer? And at the time I was like, hey, can you get me a Power BI developer? I said, today, no, give me 3 weeks. And I just started the wheel turning, right? And people started calling, and we went from that point of near death with 20 staff, and at the end of that next 12 months we had 40, and we were profitable, right? And there was a bit of a thesis that came out of that. And I apologize, I sometimes tell long stories here, but so yeah, but we the aha for me was that the industry was more comfortable spending on people than on technology. And it was it was so that was the lesson there. So we came out of that period, and it was like, okay, what is the problem that we should look to solve? We started doing some interviews, some industry research, and I can't remember, Travis, if I called you at that point, but we spoke to about we had about 36 interviews, and there was just a spray of things that people wanted solved, right? Like it was all over the place. And as we looked at the data, what actually popped was, I think there was no everybody knew the thing they wanted fixed, but everybody pointed to the danger that they'd been burnt by technology in the past. They didn't have the people. It didn't work. There was no one size fits all, right? There was all these problems, and there was a bit of an aha moment that was, wait a sec, technology is the problem here. Technology is the monster, the evil, right? The thing the hurdle that needs to become overcome. And so that started shifting us, and we started really thinking about those two data points that the industry is more comfortable with people, and there had to be a way to get through that hurdle, and that's where we really started to turn the whole thing on its end and approach the problem. We have this, borrowed it, but it's the concept of love the problem, not your solution, right? So, we got world-class talent. We've got a great talent pipeline. We can sling SQL like the best, but that's not really what matters. What matters are we solving real business problems? And that's and so we've really taken this plan, build, manage approach to helping our clients determine, is this a problem we're solving, right? And if it is, then you can actually get our ROI really, really quickly. And our thesis here is that if we solve problems quickly and positive ROI, it becomes addictive, right? And that's, everybody wins. So I'll pause there and see where we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, go on.
No, you take your thoughts.
I was just about to say, for that last bit where you said build and then up to the point where you manage, it's the design phase that so many people fail on, and it's the most important, and it's the one that a lot of people just try to quickly go through, and then they start going down a path, and when you're almost done, 6 people are like, well, that's definitely not the path we wanted, and then you just absolutely start from the beginning. But that design and getting the key stakeholders, it's still amazing how many people are just left off of emails where you're like, this is definitely their department. I don't know how that was miscommunicated. But yeah, the design part is so important. I just wish people would know that.
Well, but I mean, I'm going to jump in the middle there, Amanda. This is not actually that whole problem is not actually like a problem with data, a problem with construction, a problem with software. It's a problem with people in general, not really understanding how to get a true consensus and use the talent and expertise that they have in an effective manner to drive what is a better informed process and project and product in the end, right? Like, I can't tell you how many companies I come across, how many times I've experienced this myself personally, that exactly what you guys just described is like It's the root of all evil in
Yeah.
a lot of failures. I mean, yeah, we like failures to inform us, but we keep how many times leaving the most important person, like, hey, we're going to build all this. And so eventually it's a shovel hitting the ground, and we never talk to the person with the shovel in the ground. And they're like, you gave me a shovel. I don't want a shovel. I want a backhoe. Like,
Yeah.
Great. I have a really fast robotic shovel, but it doesn't do me any good. Sorry, I went.
Yeah, no, I wanted to give kudos back to Kristen in this whole process, because it's very what's the word I'm looking for? Analogous. That's a tough one for me.
Same.
Same. To what we do in construction, right? I mean, I think Chris, in with working with your team, I think 2/3, if not 3/4 of the time that we had discussions was all planning. There's only maybe a third or a quarter of it was any sort of execution. And I love that. And it's what, again, inspired this conversation for me, was the strategy around looking at what you have and what you want to get out of it. But then to take that and apply it then to our construction processes is something that I always think about too, is like, man, I wish we would spend way more time up front.
Yeah. I was going to hit you guys with something, because I just came off the MEP Innovation Conference. And one of the things that I talked about sort of the quality of the data you're getting based on where you're getting it from. And what I was trying to get across to people is, construction is giving technology sort of not the right try sometimes. We're like being harsher on technology than we really should be, because we're putting it in an environment that we're not going to be able to get repeatable patterns out of. So we get, our job sites where the patterns that come back, even when you record times on things, the deviation is extreme. The deviation on putting up a rack in a building is usually different from floor to floor, different from project to project, different from foreman to foreman. And the level of deviation is enough that you can kind of say, this is sort of a good descriptive analytic, but they shouldn't be prescribing stuff, because we just don't have the quality of data there. And I think that falls into your comment, Chris, on them having a bad taste about technology. If you have a piece of technology that you're using in an environment that's very like a manufacturing environment, very repeatable, very conducive, you get great data and you can use it and you can prescribe what to do next. Job site, a lot of times what I see is they try out tech on one job site and it's for one project, and they move to the next project and they don't look at how many variables no longer apply. So as you guys look at data for the construction industry, help me out. Like, what do you think people don't know that they need to know in order to look at that data and not be disappointed in what happens? Like things not dropping to the bottom line, things not repeating. Like, what are some good rules of thumb for quality of the data and how to use it?
Yeah, that's that's a great question, Jonathan. I had and I'm going to start a little bit. I presented first time live. I presented a couple months ago, and there was a group there from a large GC, and they were like, they were asking me, how do you get the executives to care about data governance? And I was trying to answer it politely, right? I was trying to say, well, you understand what their needs are, and they kind of kept coming at it, very, very technical. And finally I said, they don't care. As soon as you say data governance, they're gonna glaze over. They don't care, right? So find out what they care about and give them that, right? Find out. And there was a story a few years ago, actually that same sort of time frame that Travis was talking about. And I met like the guy, his name's Larry Keeley, and he was like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of innovation, right? Like he was, to Amanda's comments earlier, I didn't learn the idea of design from like all these wise people out there. I ran into the shredder myself, right? Like I threw tech in and went hard and didn't really think about the humans on the other side. And so yeah. And so we all do it, right? We shortcut the And I'm away from your question here, Jonathan, but we'll see if we can pull it back here, or if not.
Oh no, this is a good answer. You can have a good answer that goes far from the question. That's fine.
So no, I lost my train. But when I was talking to Obi-Wan, I told him what I was doing, and it was in and around time cards, which makes sense because of labor, and everybody has labor. And at any rate, at one point he just stops and he goes, "Start with the stupid." And that's what I said to this group that was focused on data governance. They're not going to care. Find out what is stupid to them, and fix it with them fix that with good data, right? Because if you try to clean all the data, yep, you're chasing your tail forever, and not trusting the data, bad data, that stuff's contagious, right? That like once that starts to tip in the wrong direction, you're chasing it. And so I think our approach at any rate is not the big bang. It's more of what is the problem at hand? With Travis, we were working on Stratus data, right? And it's rather than me butchering what you're trying to do, but we started the conversation around, should we just connect directly to the API, or what is the end goal here? It was a set of KPIs. It was a set of like interesting things about the business, and spending time in that conversation. Well, what would be interesting about that? What would happen once you had this information, and what exactly would that need to look like? Once you have that clarity, then you don't have the 6-month data effort, right? You can actually spin this in a matter of weeks, right? It happens really quickly. And I think that's the approach. Over time, you're going to, I think I've got this framework. I was looking at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And the very top is the enlightenment, where data becomes an enduring and valuable asset in the company that actually benefits from network effects. But you don't have to start there. You can't start there if everybody's down at the physical pain of this stuff never works. Damn it.
So, Amanda, what do you think? Like, because you've been dealing with a lot of construction information too, and yes. I think, like, when I did my talk, I literally gave like a 20-minute apologetic on why things sometimes don't work in the field before I even opened my mouth. But are you seeing, when you go out to do polling, when you go out to grab data, are you seeing areas where there's like a no-go zone? Like we don't know that this data is even something that we can look at with any level of clarity, or are people kind of open to everything?
I've definitely seen that. And I think it's because people get stuck. There is that whole thing of too many cooks in a kitchen, where you do need a broad stroke. So you need like people in the room who are going to appreciate data, but you also need the execs in the room, but you don't need every single one. And I think the issue people get stuck on is just the level of detail. So like you said, the repeatability, or like within measurements. If you're just so stuck on, it needs to be exactly like, was it 15 feet? Was it 17 feet? That's just going to kill you. Like, the better way to do it is to just zoom out and do like ranges, like 10 to 20, 20 to 50, whatever it is. Because that way you're still getting some sort of benchmark. And to Chris's point, it's what do you want? What are you looking at? Because if it is, I need a measurement within X amount, then you can start building off of that requirement. Or if it's looking at like job titles, or if it's looking at local unions, again, what do you need and why? And I think one of the biggest issues I ever ran into, and it's still an issue, but I'm getting better at solving it, is every local union technically has different ways they label workers. So some are techs, some are journeymen. And if you get it wrong in the wrong areas, it's not right. So I zoomed out and kind of did a general thing. Like, if your title is foreman, general foreman, comma, like, click this button. If you are this, click this button. Before it was individual and then an other, and it was only other that was ever used. And that was terrible for data on the other end. Like, if you're ever going through it, compiling it, whatever, if you're doing manual stuff after a while, there's no use of, you didn't build something correct. Like that's going to take way too much time. But I definitely see that. But I feel like people just need to focus on what do you want? And then there's still a way to do it. It's just zoom out a bit. People get so stuck in those meetings of, well, it's not exact on this. And it's like, okay, does it have to be? Will you ever get to that? The answer is no. Just do this. A lot simpler.
Yep. I actually think it's funny because if you ask them what they want, so half the time they're like, "Oh, we want data," and it's like, okay, that's not an answer, right? But Chris, how often do you get the answer, "I want data"? I mean, it's a relatively common thing for me, at least.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just give me the data and we'll figure it out. And I know what that looks like then is essentially a data pump to Excel, and then you're kind of back to square one. Yeah, that's there's some interesting, and I've through these periods, all these learnings tend to come out of pain. why is this thing that I thought was so brilliant not working? But you look at Jonathan talking about the apologizing for technology, and I've borrowed this, but when technology works, it's like a magic trick, right? It just kind of fades into the background and gives people time, right? Like it's a time machine.
Yep.
And so and so if there's noise on technology, until you take that noise down and really understand what the pain is there, I don't know that that's where people say, well, just give me the data, right? Because they're not getting what they need. And so we've put together this framework and I'd love to, it's fairly new, but I'd love to bounce off you guys, where that lowest level is that sort of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Is that pain of the technology. And then once you have things working, well, then the next problem is none of my systems talk together. They're all siloed. I need this with that. I'm doing, it's a data integration issue. And so that you're going from like the physiological pain to safety. And then the next tier is where you start to get data insight. And, and so when they say they want data, they don't actually want data. Like nobody wants data, right? Data is a pain in the ass. What they actually want is information, is business insight to be able to, you like that one, Jeff. But
I do.
Yeah.
Well, because I mean, and I'll even go, because I had to do this to myself. Like I used to say the word data driven.
Yeah.
And I really, that makes it so that the human is not involved, and data can't drive anything. It informs. I mean, yeah, data can drive a robot. Like we can get into the weeds if you want, but data really, from our perspective, at least this conversation, is data it informs decision-making.
Yeah.
Right. It gives us the ability to solve that problem I said earlier about not having everybody in the room. If everybody, and Jonathan, this one's on you. You got to pay Nathan. If everybody has a WIFM and they have the data, WIFM is a what's in it for me, and we have the data, then I can make an informed decision, whether that data is on a multi-trade rack, whether that data is on a structural component, whether it's just on a go, no go decision on a project itself.
Yeah.
As long as I've got everybody's info, then I can be informed to make a true decision and put it through my own lens, right? That's the other problem I have consistently with a single source of truth. A single source of truth, and I love being on the dorks, is bullshit.
I agree.
It's bullshit. Because I can tell Chris, you the same thing, Travis, you the same thing, Jonathan, you the same thing, and Amanda, you the same thing. I can tell you the same quote unquote truth, and you're going to put it through your own lens, and you're going to tell me what it is, whether it's, if it's a public policy, if it's politics, if it's even design.
Yeah.
Right. It's all about what your perspective is. That's your truth. It's a single source of information so that I can inform my own truth, which is going to differ depending on what I do. And honestly, I think over the next like 12 to 18 months, this is where I'm going to go on my own tangent, is the next 12 to 18 months. That truth is going to be more important. That information is going to be more important than it ever was for every single layer of the construction industry, the built environment, for owners, architects, engineers, trade contractors, and building product manufacturers. never is it going to be more true.
Yeah.
So, and I'm interested. So Amanda, Chris has talked a little bit about, and a lot about, like at that level of the contractor. So from your perspective, especially at ELECTI, you've got to go beyond the contractor, but you want the contractor to have the things that Chris is talking about. How do you then turn that into like leverage for the industry, leverage for what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is an issue, especially when you have the national perspective, when you're like, cool, I'd love to do a study. All of you collect everything so differently, and half of you don't collect this, and the other half collects that. I can't possibly make sense of any of that. So I get the fun problem of making like map mergers and stuff like that. But the greater sense in this is where the industry's heading is standardizing our processes, standardizing how we collect data, what measurements do we do it in. That's the ultimate goal. And, at ELECTI, we're hoping to put on a data symposium this year, and it's all about getting our contractors to submit data on purchase orders, prefab, BIM. And the thing we want to do is see how they're collecting it. And then as a group say, okay, what is the best way to collect this? What's the best way to measure it? Can we all start agreeing to go about it like this? Because it would just make so much more sense. And for any of the software companies out there too, it's an easier build, because right now every single one has a custom department.
Right.
Because everyone has a custom option. So just in general, I mean, like that's a very hard thing national wise. It's fun, but we're en route to all being in the same language, hopefully.
So I have, Jeffrey, you look like you were teeing up a question too.
No, I have a tee up and then you're coming back to it. You can hang on for 1 second.
Oh, I gotta hang on.
This is where I want to go between guests here, because I think this is fun, because there's a whiffum here that can go back to Chris, right? Yeah. Because Amanda, what you need at a global level, at an ELECTI level, right, is an understanding of whiffum that as an industry, right, as an electrical industry, we need this data. Right. But Chris, that's not going to solve the problems of every contractor.
No.
However, right, if you're thinking about them as a customer, there's lots of other information that they're going to need. So how do you connect kind of the needs of the industry, which is absolutely needed, right? Because this is where people think data is like this. It's like a zero-sum game, like businesses. It's not. Data is actually, it's unlimited. We can do what Amanda needs and then do what you need. So I'm wondering, like, when you hear something like what Amanda's talking about, that we need an industry level, and then how would you translate that to doing what you're doing from a company level?
Yeah, and I think the Nathan Wood whiffum is the right term here, right? Is how do you convince in an industry that is not always have a deep well of trust, that we all need to do it the same way, right? And there is the what's in it for me, right? And that's a tough hill, right? Because that's many companies, we were talking in the pre-show that for some it's the best of times and others is the worst of times, right? So when a company is on the rocks, their desire to help the industry starts to wane.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting, and I believe at a company level that across industries there is a have and have nots when they start tapping into data, right? There's sort of cross industries. When organizations go down this path, there's there is clearly a outpacing of competition.
Yep.
And that's that's the carrot side of it, right? Like if a company starts to lean in, and then how do they share and participate? I from a data standpoint, people may call it different things, but there's a lot of commonality, and I think the opportunity for the dictionary that goes across the industry is there, right? And that's an interesting proposition, but I'm more of a bottom up. Once the company is doing well, then their desire to improve everybody else's well-being starts to increase as well.
Can I ask just before you, Travis? This one's an easy, quick one. Do you guys have an example of where an industry has really come together and produced those common standards that's similar to construction? Because I was looking into manufacturing thinking it was going to be there, and I got like spiked into the dirt. They're like, nope, we can't even decide between two members of a giant auto manufacturer that I don't want to name. They can't decide what format they want their parts in. Like literally, it's like somebody said they wanted a common file type, and I said, you mean like for images where we have JPEGs and PNGs and SVGs? And so do you guys think that we will reach a consensus, or do you think that we're going to look to AI and other of these technologies to sort of fill in the gap where we all can't get along? You know what I mean? Like, so you can compare apples, not apples to oranges. Yeah, apples to oranges. They're both fruit, right? So we have some comparison there. But can you guys think of an example that you use as, oh, I looked to this because they already did that?
I mean, for me, I can't think of like an industry example, but I can think of something within our industry currently, and it's kind of safety. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
before we didn't have standards requirements, it was kind of like, hopefully the death count's not too high this year. And they completely changed it. And it was because it was necessary. If you want to work and have people bid on your jobs, if you don't have those requirements, you don't meet the standards, you're just not going to get it. So I almost see it like you'd have to create a need, and I'll just drop a hint and then I'll go over to Chris. But I mean, one of the big things is like digital twins coming up. If you want to play in that space with like 3D everything, BIM incorporated, everything in one area, you're going to have to play. So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, and I watched Jeff and his visceral reaction to that, and the key word that I think for me was, if you want to play. And so my example, without a compelling benefit to the participants, I don't think it happens, right? Like I think your research in manufacturing is more is the parallel. The example I was going to draw, though, is you take Apple Health, right? It's in the different apps that come up to be able to play in that ecosystem, which the parallel to safety is exactly there, right? That is the dynamic that changes, that drives the behavior that you're looking for. But I think on the whole, capitalism tends to be a fairly sort of a blood sport, right? So
it's a little transactional.
Just naturally.
Well, but naturally that was the draw, and then I want to pass it to Travis because I know he's been waiting. But that was the draw that I wanted to pull between both of you, is that really there is this ability, and especially because Chris, your customers, and I'm going to imagine for just a second, like you just have an electricals for right now. Obviously, Travis is mechanical, but I'm going to relate you two together is you've got electricals, right? And Amanda, you're looking at the electricals as a whole. The markets aren't going to stay the same forever. They're always going to pivot. So if you can show an organization that, hey, this is the data that we need to supply to them so that we can consume this data, so we can understand that as we pivot and change our business model, which changes all the time, we have the ability to consume and look at the information from an electric level to know how our organization can track to that. Now I've got a strategic advantage of the information. And the reason I was shaking my finger is because I hear the digital twin a lot. And I always say it's a data twin, not a digital twin. It's a data twin, data twin, because when I think of a digital twin, I think of some sort of modeling, and it's truly not the model that changes the world. It is the data. It's the information that we gather from what we do that drives how we work in a building, how we change a building, how we operate a building, etc. So that's mine. Travis, I'll get off my horse because this is definitely hotter than I thought. This is
coming in hot. So one of the things I wanted to get both of your input on, and maybe we'll start with Amanda, because you're leading the research arm, and you have a lot of input into a lot of the contractors, and then obviously Chris, you follow up. Was, as a lowly construction technologist, I want to play. I don't have a shop full of data scientists, so I have to build up my tech stack, and I have to try to be forward thinking enough to build it in a way that can leverage that stuff. What kind of advice, Amanda, would you have for someone in my position? Because, yes, I work for a large company, but for, whatever rhyme or reason, I don't have a staff of developers. I don't have data scientists. I am trying to buy things off the shelf. And we know everything's not interconnected, everything's disparate, all, including our own departments. So, what kind of advice do you both have for the strategy as a construction technologist who knows the industry and the company both want to leverage the data, but we're trying to cobble solutions together?
I think the big one is, what do you need? So especially like the smaller guys, you want payroll, things like that. And the bigger guys, they need a lot. So it's kind of making that little, essentially like an ER diagram of like, all right, it's just relationship diagram. Like, what do I need? So make your little categories. And then from there, it's budget and sophistication. And when it comes to the data aspect, it is kind of, you don't know what you don't know, but at the same time, if you do have questions of, for instance, I want to kind of know which project managers are ordering too many purchase orders per week, is it my guys that have been around for a while, or is it the new guys? And why is that? Is it because some just aren't going to change? Is it the new guys don't know what they're doing yet? But I would say it's based on your needs and budget. Like, I do hear a lot, our smaller and medium contractors do get upset because some of these software companies that do have like excellent solutions for them and do kind of have that all-encompassing or enough encompassing areas for them, the price range isn't there. Like, they just don't offer a step ladder approach.
Yep.
And that's the big thing I try to communicate with our software partners of like, hey, you have like a huge segment of the industry. You have a lot of 3 to 4 size small contractors,
Right.
tons of them, but they want to get bigger, or if they do want to stay, they still want data, but you're not making it an easy entry level into the market at all. But I would definitely say look at what you need, what you want, and then some cool aspects that you're looking for to kind of start building your tech stack. And one of the big things for me is when I started in the industry, I was like, what tech stack is it? What type of name is this? What does this mean? Is it a digital twin? Like, you basically had to go Google it, figure it out. And once you Google it, I mean, resources like Nika, like ELECTI, there's just tons of free information out there, webinars of stuff that you can just where to start from. I mean, Jonathan, you put on tons of stuff for the industry of like, where do I start? Actually getting involved and figuring out who in this industry knows what they're talking about and reaching out to them, because a lot of people want to help.
Yeah, Chris, it looks like you got a few thoughts on that one.
Oh, I am. I'm trying to figure out, will I insult somebody?
Go for
Oh,
it.
no, it's okay. Please do.
No, we're good.
So
Let me check. You're all right.
I have noticed that bourbon looks good, Jeff. But
It's really good.
the interesting part, if you buy the premise that that technology is the problem, is the hurdle, then labeling yourself as the construction tech person means you have to apologize for 20 minutes at the start of the presentation. Right? And so I think there's a lot of power in words. And so if you think about going up that hierarchy, perhaps what you really are, Travis, is you're a business impact analyst, right? And what you do is you rally the pieces together to achieve that outcome, right? And I think that perhaps changes the lens people look at you through. Now, then you go into how do you do it with limited budgets and all that stuff, and this may be thinly veiled self-serving, but we just we're starting to step into awareness, and similar to the fractional CFO, space, we've hired a fractional CMO with a managed service. And as we hired this individual, I realized that to a certain extent, that's what we're doing, right? We're providing data strategy services, right? Fractional chief data officer with execution. And if you're, everybody's comfortable when you have a staff member that's sitting in the building with a card but if you actually look dollar for dollar, I think your money can go a lot further by getting on-demand world-class talent as you need it, right? And so I think for career advice, and it's again, I learned this by when I jumped in and had the technology mantle. I started a construction tech group because I wanted to delineate it from the IT group, right? The team that got computers and set up emails, right? The stuff that every company needed, and then the stuff that construction companies needed. But I think the power in going up that stack and saying, okay, what does the business need, right? What information would lend to decision making, to Jeff's comments earlier. And I think that's the evolution of the role, right? Is to sit in the middle of understanding tech and understanding the business and being able to rally the resources to drive those outcomes.
You hit on a few things there. I think you're right.
It's the Scotch.
Or it's the Scotch.
Right.
Hey, Scotch. No, you're hitting on something that I think is an absolute game changer. And I've been saying it since I got into this industry, is that the one thing that's gone is the need to invest in the overhead that it used to take to do the things. You started selling servers. That's not a thing. And I think you're data as a service right now. Like, we look at platform as a service, data as a service, infrastructure as a service. Everything is as a service. You can get marketing as a service. You can, as a small, and Amanda, this is where I want to hit on those electrical contractors that are 4 or 5 people in a truck. The key is, if you can use it as a service now, you're spending per what you're using, which is the same scale as the large ones. And in fact, it's a better scale because you're using it's a consumption-based model. And they had to build it to handle the Christmas rush, as a platform. You don't have to do that. You can scale it up elastically to handle what you need to handle. If you've got, if you're subbing out on a few jobs and you're, going to bring in a few subcontractors, great. You can fire it up a little further. That's the trick. And to me, the business advantage to this as a service culture we've created, but there's a lack of fundamentals around what that data is that you need to collect to inform yourself in the future.
Yeah.
Right. To me, that's the critical component that leaders of new businesses, that 4 or 5 person thing, can't necessarily wrap their mind around, is that the why behind what I need this information for now is to inform me later.
Yeah. Oh, Jeff, I don't care who wanted to talk next. I'm going.
Right on.
We like that.
Yeah, we like that.
And I mentioned earlier the network effects, right? Like, as you do this work, and there's and it's completely understandable. You have the technology startup space, and there's been you guys all know this. There's been a wild run of investment into the space that outpaces all the other industries in terms of VC capital. And geez, I got so excited about that. I just
wait before you go. 5.38 billion in 2022. Yeah. So you guys know it was 0.02% or 0.02 billion less. So previous in 2021, it was 5.40 billion. So it's 5.
What's 0.02 of a billion here and there? But
what's a billion amongst friends?
Chump change.
Yeah.
But to back your point up, like the investment, and especially if you look at the investment across other spaces, other sectors, we're maintaining in what is an unappetizable environment for venture capital going forward. They still have an appetite. for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they see the opportunity, right? Like it's the industry has been a laggard, and the the key to get through that, what is the key to get through that? And the industry, and I was going to talk about the culture mismatch, right? So the VC, experiment, fail fast, and where construction is low margins, no mistakes, right? Don't like, and so that, but at the same time, so what you see when we do work, and Travis, one of the early conversations we had was, should I just wire this direct to the API? Yes, for today, but you're not putting that data away for tomorrow, right? You're not putting it somewhere that is actually starting to, and this is a real word, to asset the data, so that, what might that be useful with in next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now, that starts to have that network effect of creating a value. One of my favorite data stories, right? So, and I'll have to play loose with the details here, but so one of the if you were to guess, one of the large capital companies that outgrew everybody else from about 2010 to 2020, so over a decade, what would you think would be one of the big companies that outgrew everybody else? Now, people tend to say, it's probably a Tesla or a Google or a Facebook or and you can look this up. You look at the chart of Domino's, and Domino's outgrew them all. Yeah, it's wild.
I was like, I'm gonna go with. I had a couple others that I was thinking.
Yeah.
Domino's is not where I was going.
Domino's not there.
No.
Papa John's was on mine, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, it's but Domino's back in, I think it's about 2009, went on this this very focused data strategy, right? They're, for some of the older folks, they had an infamous moment on a young YouTube where some pizza defiling was taking place that made it to the public. And you can look this up, but it essentially, and so it had quite an effect on the perception of Domino's, and the fact that the pizza tasted like cardboard. Like you go back and look at it, and they went and they started they started investing in data to understand the customer, and the first quarter that they did that, and this is where I say, how fast can things happen? The first quarter that they really started to invest in understanding their customer and how they bought, who was the buyer in the household, and how they took delivery, and how they, the ordering environment. But the first quarter that they invested, their quarter over quarter sales increase was 14%, right? Which is the largest recorded quarterly increase in large quick service retail. And then over the next decade, they actually outgrew all these, all the big five and whatnot. And to the point before COVID hit, and the emergence of like Uber Eats and DoorDash and whatnot, they were actually positioned to be the leader in, quick service experience and retail as a service, right? And so through that data, they were actually at the point of actually transforming the type of business they actually were, right? And at that point, they actually had 50% of the online pizza sales, and it's a crazy story. So I think that opportunity is available in construction, right? If it's there in pizza, I think it's there in construction, and and so
I laugh. I was pointing at you because I explained as a service and all the different things as pizza as a service in my early. Travis is nodding his head.
Yeah, you've been there. I've been there.
You were in the room when I did it. Like, we did pizza as a service, and it was like the take and bake, make it yourself, all the different things, and how we did it. So that was awesome, Chris. Amanda, you've been shaking your head during that. Like, what's your thoughts?
I literally have so many parallels. Yeah, if you go on like LinkedIn on the job board and you just type in data, pretty much the first 3 pages are all going to be about customer insight jobs. It's all about learning the behavior of what they want. And it's similar to construction where they know what their customers and owners in the areas, want. And for some reason, it's still seen as like such a taboo subject of data. And it's kind of like on Apple where it's like, you're going to get, ads. Do you want to just check the button that says you'll just get ads that pertain to you? Like they literally tell you, they warn you, you're still going to get ads, but do you just want ads to actually be what you want? And for some reason, people are so scared. They're like, nope, I'll just take random ads. Okay, it's coming and you can use these insights to be beneficial. So if you know what your customers want, I mean, certain areas, for instance, like with EV coming up, we have some of our large contractors that are working with VCs that know where EVs are coming in, where like the huge truckloads of all the Chevys coming over, they know where some of these things are going to be put in place, and they want to kind of use the data of where they are area-wise, how many workers can they put out there? Like they're using data to see if it's beneficial and going to be profitable. So it's kind of like, why not? Why not use what customer insights you have and go for it?
Do you think that's getting a lot of friction then against the people that I mean, because yes, you have all this data, you have all this analysis you can apply to your customers, but we still very much think it's a relationship business, which it is partially. But I mean, is that where are you feeling pushback there when you start talking about that kind of stuff? Like I took Jim and Mary out to a steak dinner the other night. I know what they need. We're fine. Is that where you kind of get some rub from that?
Yeah, and I do get like people know their secret sauce. Like that's why they call it secret sauce. Like they know in their gut feelings, like certain things. I'll never buck up against that. Like that makes sense. If you have a business that you've had for 40 years and you've made it work, that is excellent. Keep doing it. It's just you can do it better or you can add to it. It's kind of like the light bulb industry. Those who stuck with halogen are out. Those who kind of pivoted into the LED space and other forms, like they still kept halogen for a while, but they branched out. They didn't let the new stuff scare them.
Sure.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah.
So
that's all I had.
Well, no, I have a couple questions, and not to be like the not to be negative, but I'm going to be just a little bit negative because I have to deal with a lot of people that like go down the data path and then and I look at them and right away I'm like, okay, you misapplied this, you misused it. It wasn't meant for kind of where you're going. But like with Domino's, them understanding the analytics of their company, they're doing a very procedurally prescribed thing. Like you can go into Domino's, they will tell you exactly how to flip that pizza, exactly how to throw that pizza, exactly how many pepperonis to put on it if they don't have a machine that does that for you. All right. So it's very repeatable. It's very prescriptive. And I think for them, amazing growth. But like, I think when I go to the contractors and they're like, hey, I want to be data driven. I'm like, do you have a fab shop? Because if you want to be data driven, I hate to say it, I'm going to tell you to get a fab shop first. So you have something that's repeatable and you can actually use some data in. Because I feel like if you don't do that, what ends up happening, Amanda, you brought up safety as metrics that we all agree on. Everybody who's a contractor knows how much they have been frustrated by the other contractor who is totally lying about their reportables, whose reportables no longer, because we know, like, and this, I'm going to give Nathan $1. I can't believe I'm going to give Nathan $1. Tell me how I'm measured and I'll tell you how I act. All right. So if I know you are measuring my safety statistics, I may, if I am unscrupulous, do something to adjust them. So what do you guys feel about, and this goes back to that when the observer changes the observed environment thing, right? And you guys are experts in data. This is why I'm asking. By the way, you guys gave me awesome information. Chris, I'm going to totally steal the time thing from you for sure. Like it's going to be, how can I give you back time instead of how I can get you some technology? And Amanda, I will be using safety as my statistic to sort of compare to in how you might get there. But how do you guys feel about gaming the system, and the fact that as we set KPIs, people just game the KPI. Like game theory came out like back in the 30s, 20s, right? And one of the reasons it didn't catch on was the second you write down the game, someone cheats the game. Like we have crazy rummy in my house. The way to win that rummy is to not bet anything extra. If you are the person that doesn't bet anything extra first, you will always win. The game will suck. No one will enjoy it. No one will enjoy this game, but you will win because game theory is, statistical. So how do you guys feel about that? The reaction to data? Like, we know we have data and therefore there's a reaction. Do you feel that removes it, or do you feel people understand that? Like, what's your thoughts there? I realize that was a big question. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's you take any tool, and can a hammer be used to build something or brain something? Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And art is not the tool.
Yeah. And so I think when you look at data, right, so are you using it to control, or to, like, you look at the purpose, like, what is the outcome you're driving, right? And there is a dynamic of, give me all the information so that I can know when something's wrong and come in and fix it. Or you can make the information, the insight available to the right person at the right time. And so this hierarchy I keep talking about, where you go from construction, you get tech working, right? You get digital time cards or what have you, but then there's this friction between the collection and then the payroll system. And so we get pulled in to fix problems there quite often, right? And that's a data integration problem. And generally the problem is that somebody thinks it's a good idea to use Excel macros between enterprise systems, right? And so when the business logic changes that Amanda was referring to, right? When somebody's working out of a zone, or different rates, or different, when things change, you are now monkeying around with the integration vehicle to adjust to the business logic, right? So anyway, I may have gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but what we advocate in that case is, a little shipping company called FedEx built a space essentially on a hub and spoke model, right? So the idea of, there's an opportunity here to actually put something securely into a place in an enterprise grade way, and then put it wherever you want, right? Rather than this fragile approach. And I am going to get to your point here, Jonathan. I need lots of runway to get the big plane off. But
I see where you're headed, I think.
Yeah. But so once that information's there, right? Like we slam all this tech on field leaders, and are we giving them time or taking time, right? Like generally we're taking time with really no benefit. But if you actually make that insight available back to those people, might they do something useful with it, right? Rather than let's get it all the way through the sausage making, and then a week and a half later, we might have insight so that we can tell them how they screwed up 2 weeks ago, right? And so I think that's I don't think it's a hammer problem. I think it's a usage problem, and how might we improve the business? And the companies that lean into that are the ones that I think are going to start outpacing, right?
Chris, man, you said that perfectly.
Wow,
you said it's the person and their perspective on the data that makes that data valuable or non-valuable, and that's awesome. That's like, I'm gonna go.
Well, I'm
gonna go think about that for a while and take a shot.
I'm gonna agree with Chris, because it's about weaponizing the data for good, not for bad. You've got two options, and I have said this at every organization I've gone to, and I've watched them take data and weaponize it as a carrot or a stick, and the stick always ends up in crushing the company. In a carrot, it always ends up driving them towards the goal. So I'm wondering, Amanda, now, how do you take that at like the ELECTRI level and say like, wow, here's a hell of a carrot for all of us?
Yeah, and that's a huge problem. We have to be real careful with weaponizing data. I mean, just in the 5 years I've been here, I remember when I started out, I literally had to go find data because no one wanted to give it to me at all, and that was real sad. But it took a really long time, and it was it was around the awareness and education factor. And it took the grassroots approach is what I did. Legitimately went to a few contractors who were willing to play and, explain to them, if you give me your data, I can give you some cool insights. And the whole thing was not for me to do it, but to do it initially and then give them that sustainable, they will continue on to do it. But it was cool. Like, we had one contractor where he had some PMs that he honestly thought were like creme de la creme. They were the worst ones. Like, they were the ones who didn't show up on the job site. And then if you look at some of the new guys that they thought were just never, they're young, they're goofing off, they actually were showing up every day. And then sometimes when they're like, oh, they're goofing off in certain days, only in the mornings, it's because that's when their school was. So it was kind of like, it was all a real cool education factor. And when we sat down, it was, hey, don't like go after your PMs right now. Like, don't go beat them over with that. It was find out why, be like, hey, like you're setting the example for everyone else here. It's all about legitimately using it for a good cause.
Yep.
And like you said, I mean, there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics, and people know how to game it if they want to. So if you don't use it in a good way, they'll figure out a way to still make numbers look a certain way, and it doesn't benefit anyone. So
that's where I was going to head with it. It's so much about how you're going to use it and how you're going to, and I tell every company, and Chris, I'll be interested in this one on you, is like, when I talk to anybody about a data strategy, to me, it's about, how can we improve? Right? It's not about how can I smack you. It's about where can we find ways to be better as an organization. And then all of a sudden that gamification changes everything.
Yeah.
Because yes, I can gamify for the negative and I can avoid things and I can change my EMR and the way things are. But ultimately that's not helping my business grow at all.
Yeah. No, I 100. Yes. And how I tend to frame it as well, right? In an industry that's so cost conscious, rightfully, low margins, risk, cost conscious, of course. The data strategy, once you start stacking up some wins with data insights, the data strategy is really, it's an investment strategy. And it's an investment strategy in how do you leverage data to support your business strategy, right? And once you have that linkage, and if every dollar you're putting in is spinning $1.20 back, you might start putting a few dollars in, right? That's the, and so that's yeah, absolutely. It's about, the only reason to invest is to improve, like you're saying. So yeah.
I like that a lot. It harkens me back to your presentation, Jonathan. Like, you're talking about hiring software. We've talked about, whatever, positions as a service, I guess I would say it. You're talking about investing. Like, it is kind of funny to me from an industry's perspective. We don't have any problem like hiring somebody to put a butt in a seat to do a thing, but we have a problem spending money on a consultant, or we had a problem spending money on a technology or software or whatever. But if you frame it more as like, I'm investing in a thing and treating it like a person, it does completely change that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, I did a talk on when I have to deal with CEOs, I always talk about software like people. Like, totally like people. Like, it's part-time software, it's full-time software. It's sexy but not good at its job. It's obtuse, it's going to retire too soon, it doesn't get along with anyone. Like, those are the things that people know how to manage, right?
I saw that presentation for the first I saw that presentation for the first time at MVP Innovations, and I was like, why have I not been talking about it that way since the beginning? But the problem is, all I can think of when you say that is the book "You're a Thing and I Love You." If you want to know about AI, just read the book "You Are a Thing and I Love You," and it will explain the world of AI. That's what I had. I'm going to drop a little knowledge And then because you guys actually said this along the way, and I went and researched the quotes while we were sitting here, and I want you guys to end it this way because we're getting that to that point. And John Dewey said, "A problem well put is half solved."
Yeah.
So when it comes to data, Amanda, as you're looking out across, I'm going to take you beyond Electri and into the industry because that's what I think is cool about Electri is, right? You got freedom.
Mm-hmm.
What's your wisdom on data for them, and what do they care about? Why right now? Why is now the time?
Now's the time because it's, in fact, it was literally at the Electri meeting this past week, which it was like a moment of a light bulb. We were talking about digital twin, and a lot of people scratched their heads, rightfully so. It's relatively, in the sense of a term, new-ish. And it was Josh who said, it's like the cloud, like 10 years ago. And how many people now, like everyone uses the cloud. If you're using Office 365, you're using the cloud. Everything is now, like, you can't say, I don't know what the cloud is. Like it's here, it's now. I find data insights that way. If you are not using data to help, like you said, inform business decisions, you're still going to be that person in the room 10 years later after the cloud already happened being like, are they talking about the weather? Like you're going to be left behind. And I think now's the best time to get involved if you haven't. It's great. Look at your business. Literally take a deep dive. Look at what you want to know. Look at the investment part. If you can actually look at data insights on jobs you've done and know that these are not going to be profitable. I'm writing purchase orders like 7 in a week on these type of jobs. Don't bid on those jobs again.
Yep.
Bid on the ones that are doing great. Invest in your company by investing in data.
That's awesome. That has to pivot into you, Chris.
Oh, geez. That was a high note to, and I guess if we're pulling quotes from smart people, Einstein said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. Right.
Yeah.
And in these times here, I heard that like when the world's gone through a transformation, and these transformations tend to take about 3 years. So we're about entering into the new normal, and I think there's going to be a separation of the have and have-nots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the topic of tech, Jonathan, I'm going to now use that. Think of it as a person. That's so we're even Steven now. But the way to get started is to get started and to pick something that pick the stupid, right? Pick the thing that is the pebble in your shoe and get rid of it and see how it feels, right? Because that's the way to start. And spending that time on the upfront, like it's not the technology, it's the business outcome at the other side that actually makes the difference. And so that's hopefully that's a good wrap.
That
That's
is
very
an
well.
incredible wrap. That is the way we're going to end it. Jonathan, Travis, as always, the best part of my week. Amanda, Chris, thank you so much for stopping in and
fantastic.
being a
Thank
part
you
of the
both.
Construction Dorks. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. This was a ton of fun.
Hey, it's always a ton of fun. And you owe Jonathan. Jonathan owes you. But ultimately, we're going to call this one. This is the Construction Dork signing out from Data is an Investment in Strategy.
Nice.
Right on.
I like it.
Love it.
And we're out.